To put on your headphones? You entered the darkest, wildest, sexiest depths of technology. And here to keep you on the bleeding edge of science, tech, and ethics is the Rated R radio star, the man of tomorrow, the golden stallion of the tech world, Brian Sovryn. He has a huge brain. And now, here's Brian.
The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the Rated R radio star, here for a little Sovereign Tech this week. And oh, baby, I love it when this happens. Now, last week, of course, actually an exceptionally popular episode, like ridiculously popular. I can't believe it. In fact, if you want to, do a little clap for the Golden Stallion, you can, wherever you happen to be at the moment. I mean, it'll probably look weird. Maybe if you're like at the zoo and you're near some seals or something, you could go, you can make little clap things and you'll be fine. Then you won't look so odd. But if you want to give me a little clap, because I have finally reached, I've gotten into the 5 digits of followers on Twitter, and it's a very exciting thing for me. Oh, wait, you hear some claps. What is this? Woo! All right. Yeah, that's deserving of a woo. Because last week's episode was just so hot, so popular. People are listening to it, nonstop, and hopefully it'll help take Sovereign Tech to the next level. And maybe this week's episode will as well, because I'm once again joined by the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy, who was on last week. Woo! All right. And that was one of the clappers. Then the other clapper, of course, is just the absolutely
real-life sea lion. No, just kidding.
But also
way better.
Yeah, joined by someone that's not a sea lion. But it's the embodiment. I mean, she materialized right in this studio. It is Pixel herself, the amazing, the inimitable Paige Peterson. Woo! Right on. Welcome back to Sovereign Tech. It's always great to have you on.
Yeah, it's glad to be here. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's taken her physical form just for this show.
I know,
just for today.
Yeah.
And last night. But.
Woo! Always great to have you on. And we're going to, I keep saying this every time you come on the show, that we got to make it happen more often. But I'm really going to make that a concerted effort.
Well,
Yep.
It's going to be the summer of Pixel. There we go. I like it.
Summer of
I
Pixel.
like that.
Because actually, Paige, you're going to be joining me. Stephanie, you'll be there too. And I think you may even be helping out as well as far as with, at PorcFest. I will be giving a talk. It's actually called, Reclaiming Privacy, in the Mobile World. And this will be on Friday. That's June 23rd. At 3 p.m. Eastern, I will be giving that talk, and it's going to be on the biggest stage. They asked me, they said, Brian, we'd love to have you, come and talk. And I said, well, it's only if I get the main stage. I didn't say that, but, but they gave it to me anyway, which is really nice. But after the fact, at 4 p.m. on that same day, we're going to do like an hour-long workshop and help people like get all their, get Signal on their phone, all these different things, and just like help them out with, securing their devices and whatever. And Paige, you're going to be helping out with that.
Definitely. Yeah. It's kind of like a crypto party, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and how could you not, I don't know. I'd be buying a ticket right now if I knew that I could work personally with Pixel. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I think I'll be there all week too.
Sure.
I didn't go to PorcFest last year, but I've been the previous 3 years before that, and it'll be different, I think. But
yeah, I'm curious to see how this year shapes up.
I am curious, so it'll be good. I think it'll be fun to be outside and stuff too. So.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to look into this and they've never heard of it, I'll put a link in the appendix of the show notes for this episode. This is episode 225. Boy, I can't believe that either. 225 episodes of this damn show. Woo!
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. But it's porcfest.com. That's PORC. Pork as in porcupine, not as in porking something.
Not as in bacon.
Yeah, not as in bacon.
Wrong animal.
Right. But anyway, do check that out. And if you want to be there, I know already a lot of Sovereign Tech listeners, as soon as they found out I was going to be there, that they are, signing up and they're on their way. And I think that's just very exciting. So it's going to be great to, I'll be there. And obviously a bevy of very lovely ladies will also be along. Which is fantastic.
So what about rumors of hosting a live Sovereign Tech? We've not decided that yet, right?
Still looking into that.
Okay.
Whether or not that's going to be a thing. thing. I mean, and I
the
could
last
kind of.
one you did was very popular. This was 2 years ago.
Oh yeah, people were. Yeah, you know, I still have the video. A great guy, and I mean this, genuinely one of those people in the world that I just feel so comforted knowing that they're out there. Ryan Taylor. He actually video recorded that whole thing, and I've yet to really release that. But now that I have the whole Patreon thing and everything, where I get all this exclusive content, I think that's the perfect spot for it. And so I need to finally release that. Because you were there, Paige. MK Lords was there, which everybody, let's say hi to MK. Woo! Hey, MK!
Hey, MK.
Yeah. Wonderful Sovereign Tech producer and recent guest. She'd been on quite a bit.
That's right.
And just a, another one of those people, just the wonderful people on the planet. There's not many of them, but she's one of them. In my opinion, anyway, folks. You can feel differently. That's fine. So, yeah, now one other thing to get out of the way is that I also want to say thank you to all the Sovereign Tech listeners for the tremendous birthday wishes. May 12th was my birthday yesterday. I'm now 36, for those that are wondering. Everybody's like, how old is this guy? Is he 120? What's the deal here? And while I do have some gray, I don't have that much gray. And I don't know if anyone's going to be reaching those. Well, no, actually, I think people are going to be living for a very long time in this generation. But regardless, thank you so much for all of that. I'm really honored by, by people doing that. It was really, really sweet and really great. So, all right, enough of that. That's all that stuff. Let's get to talking. We're actually going to get into this is kind of going to be like last week where, there won't be any breaks. We're sort of going to do a single topic show to some degree, later on. But there's a couple things. I mean, when I have Paige Peterson here, who works for Zcash, which of course I am a huge fan of. And if you want to donate to the show in Zcash, you can do so with a shielded address. Not everybody offers that. But you can find that sovereigntech.com if you want to find out about all that. But yeah, so Paige, you work for Zcash, and I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't ask for my audience, how is Zcash doing? How are things going? Like give me the score.
Well, we've had quite an exciting past month. I think with the whole just people putting money into cryptocurrency, we've seen a huge ramp up in price of Zcash, which is cool in some aspects. It did at one point cause a little bit of network congestion with it was like a large exchange was consolidating a bunch of their funds, and so it was basically filling up blocks, and we're having some just basically slow transactions at that point. But since then, it's kind of leveled out, and that actually gave us a good test of what filled up blocks looks like, because we had never known what that was going to be like before. So that kind of pushed us to think about that a little bit sooner than we were anticipating we would have to. But other than that, we've had some good new integrations. So finally you can use Zcash on iOS through Jax. They
okay.
So obviously Apple and the App Store has been pretty selective with what cryptocurrencies they allow, and finally Zcash is a part of that selective group, which is cool.
Yeah, that is an important thing to bring up, because Jax, the Jax wallet, which is a fine wallet, the Jax wallet on iOS is kind of different from the one on Android.
Yeah.
On Android, they can put in Dash, they can put in all these different ones.
Yeah.
As to where on iOS, it's Apple's saying, no, you can't do that, and you can't do this, which is, it's crazy, but there you go. This is, that's Mother Apple for you.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
But that's really cool that they accepted Zcash. In fact, I'm intrigued by it, because I really felt that the ones that they were saying can't be on there were ones like Zcash, where it's, these really genuinely private, transactions and privacy oriented.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I honestly have no idea how they're making these decisions.
Right.
Because, the Dash community has been trying for this for a long time and without success. So,
sure.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if they have someone in the background that's whispering to the higher ups that Dash is a scam, or I don't know what it is, but
well, I could believe, I'll tell you, I think in a very real way, I do think Apple actually does kind of care about privacy, more so than maybe some other tech giants.
Yeah.
And I could believe that they're excited about zero knowledge proofs, which is of course the basis of Zcash.
Totally.
And that maybe they want to play nice with that, or they don't want to look like hypocrites if they ever implement it in some form or fashion. A long held theory of mine on Sovereign Tech is that Apple's eventually going to become a bank. like itself.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they're going to do the reverse Mitsubishi, which Mitsubishi originally was a bank, then became an electronics company.
Right.
As where Apple's an electronics company, then it's going to become a bank. And honestly, like, how impressive would a bank be that uses zero knowledge proofs? I mean, holy shit.
Well, that's the thing, actually. Like, banks are quite interested in Zcash compared
Which surprises
to
me.
other cryptocurrencies, because they don't operate in the public. They require privacy, especially with competing banks, or if there's a bank that's going to be working with a blockchain, they're probably gonna require some sort of privacy technology.
Sure.
And so there's definitely some interest in that realm. So we'll see with Apple when they go big.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and honestly, like, in my opinion, my personal opinion, I think Zcash has probably the best thing going as far as, any kind of private cryptocurrency.
Yeah. I mean, we still have a long way to go. There's still a lot of improvements that are to be made for, like, the shielded addresses and
Sure.
making those easier, because it still takes quite a bit of resources to make a payment with the shielded address. You basically require, like, some sort of desktop or laptop with a lot, at least 3 gigs of RAM. But we're working on a couple of features that, one, would allow you to sort of offload that computation to a server side. So a separate computer can do the computation and then send that proof back to the original client, which would sign the transaction and then
Right.
send it. So it's kind of like, it's kind of like a client server setup where you could have, like, this trusted thing where there's a third party service hosting the server, and you sort of trust them to keep the computation and the privacy side to themselves. Or you could set up your own little home server where it's not really trusted, or it is trusted, but you're just trusting your own computer. So
Yeah. Now, so that's a really key point. And this is the thing. And I just want to explain this to maybe some listeners that might not be following on it. But the idea is that it is so resource intensive
Yeah.
to do genuinely shielded, encrypted transactions with Zcash.
yeah.
You need a lot of memory.
Yeah, you
Right.
just can't do it on a mobile phone. That's really what the
Right.
biggest limitation is. Most laptops at this point can handle it,
Right.
but
But yeah, mobile device probably isn't going to do it. Now, I think a lot of people would bristle when they hear, oh, wait a minute. So the solution for this is to, have this stuff getting done on some server somewhere.
Yeah.
Where's the decentralization? Where is
Right.
it? Oh my God. And I don't mean to insult people. I appreciate that they want their decentralization,
Yeah.
but like you said, the real solution here is that you could just run it at your house.
yeah,
Or you
just
could even,
you offload it to a computer at your house, or like, one of those little, like, Bitseed type Bitcoin node type things where it's not really like a laptop or a computer that you have. It's just like this little node that you keep plugged in all the time, or like a
dedicated device. It's
Yeah.
basically
Yeah.
like division of labor
Yeah.
to do
Right.
the intensive computation
Right.
on a device that's meant to do it.
right.
you could probably even like just have a mining rig kind of doing double duty, right? I mean, it's already running
Yeah.
a node pretty much.
Definitely, as long as
And-
it has enough resources to do
Right.
all of that at once. Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah. So it can be decentralized because everybody can run their own. Go ahead, Stephanie. What do you got?
So Zcash, I'm showing my ignorance here, but I think a lot of people would want to know, like, what is the, is it mined, and like, is it based on proof of work, or what is that?
It's proof of work. The algorithm is equihash, which is memory intensive. So the general idea is to make it ASIC resistant. We'll kind of see. We're not like, we were definitely much more confident, say, a year ago before we launched, but we're, with any sort of like kind of mining and money making venture, you're going to see centralization. So we're seeing centralization in like pools forming, like how Bitcoin has. So that's something that's just such a hard problem to solve. Yeah, so it's a different algorithm than Bitcoin.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as to where, like with Bitcoin, it was CPU intensive, right?
Yeah.
Instead of memory intensive.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of different altcoins and cryptocurrencies have tried to, these different ideas of, okay, well, let's make it more, I don't know, GPU or RAM intensive, like Monero's RAM intensive as well. I mean, there's a bunch of these different ones where they try, and this is all to try and solve that whole issue of centralization, I guess, to a degree. That way anybody, effectively, I mean, because like you'd think with Bitcoin, right, it was brilliant. It's like, okay, so it's CPU intensive and pretty much everybody's got a dual core. So great. Everybody's going to be able to, run their own little node and everything's going to be nice. But then ASICs come along and all that changes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's worthy to give it a shot, but I appreciate your humility in saying, well, this might not,
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, we're not afraid. We kind of like put ourselves in between Bitcoin in terms of development, the Bitcoin core team and the Ethereum core team, where Bitcoin is super conservative and they are very slow to change things and, all of that. Whereas Ethereum is very progressive and they're not really afraid to
move fast and break things.
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of we're very happy that
emphasis
they came
on
first.
The break things. Sorry. That's just me saying that, folks.
Yeah. So we're actually really glad that these experiments happen first and we can sort of learn from them and kind of find our place somewhere in the middle. So we're saying we're not afraid of doing hard forks, but we're going to be very careful with them and plan them out diligently.
Be transparent.
Exactly. So, we could change things significantly in the future, depending on what the community wants. And, if the mining algorithm doesn't seem to be working out, we could change that up in a hard fork or something. But for now, we're definitely sticking with it because we have so many other improvements that we want to make first for the shielded addresses specifically. So
sure. Yeah. I appreciate that about Zcash. And eventually here, Paige is going to take off her Zcash hat. Yeah. She won't be speaking for them in a minute. But I appreciate the fact that Zcash doesn't really seem to have, I mean, this is just me, what I perceive. It doesn't have a really outlandish narrative around it. I think Bitcoin certainly had a narrative around it, a narrative that I think did a 180 by... Well, there's that classic exchange between Satoshi and Gavin Andreessen where Gavin Andreessen messages Satoshi and says, I want to get this away from its black flag, anarchist roots, and everything. And that, in my opinion, sucked, but because that was sort of the narrative is that Bitcoin was, and it's in the white paper where look, this is going to free people. This is going to, allow you to finally own your money, blah, 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 and all this. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with that, but the thing is that now today, Bitcoin feels like a very different animal than that.
Yeah, for sure.
And, then you have Ethereum, which has just the wildest of narratives, and I don't even need to go down that road. I've done that too many times. But regardless, Zcash just seems to have a very, I don't want to use the term conservative, but maybe cautious. I don't know. Just, it's no, this is a encrypted money or shielded money. And that's about it.
Yeah. What it is it's just internet money. That's what it comes down to. It's internet money. And for internet money to be successful, you require privacy. You require not being centralized.
Yep.
And those are the two things that separate Zcash from other attempts. So we're we kind of see the privacy as just this thing that's necessary. You can't have internet money without it. So yeah, we're not saying one way or the other. Internet money can be used for anything. Obviously you don't want bad people to use it, but you have to accept the fact that it's going to happen and find other solutions to prevent bad people from doing bad things rather than, restricting it from all the good people. So,
yeah, and in my own opinion, internet money, I want it to be purpose built. I do not want it to be that's the thing with Ethereum. It's this general purpose thing. And it's yeah, but I'm not okay with that.
Yeah.
And who's even asking for that? It's we already have general purpose stuff, operating systems and, the internet's infrastructure, so yeah, I like this idea of it being purpose built, especially when literally money's on the line.
Yeah.
Let's be very clear cut, have that precision of what we're doing here. So I really respect that and I appreciate that personally.
Cool.
So, Stephanie, how often so you're a co-host on Let's Talk Bitcoin.
That's right.
Yeah. You, Andreas, and Adam B. Levine. And, I mean, how often does Zcash come up on that show? I'm curious.
Almost, I can't remember the last time it did, which, I mean, that's unfortunate, I guess. Yeah. We kind of try to mostly stick to Bitcoin issues.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Because it is like the name of the show.
Yeah.
And like the minute we start talking about other coins, sometimes we get people like approaching us like, oh yeah, feature my coin on your show.
Oh, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. So we kind of mostly stick, and there's been a lot to talk about in the Bitcoin world too, with
definitely
all the like debate going on and stuff. But sure. I mean, I'm definitely interested in Zcash as well.
Cool.
Well, an interesting bit of news. Did Coinbase, was it just in the past week or two, they implemented Litecoin?
Yeah, they added Litecoin.
Yeah, and I think they said it was specifically, I mean, maybe I'm misquoting them, but I think they said it was because they were so concerned about what's happening with Bitcoin that
That's actually really interesting because Charlie Lee was the founder of Litecoin.
He works for Coinbase, doesn't he?
He has worked for Coinbase for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it had to be a little awkward, like when they added Ethereum but not Litecoin, to Coinbase.
Yeah.
And he was working there for years, and they finally implemented it. But yeah, Litecoin has been trying to, I guess the development team has been trying to integrate segregated witness in Litecoin.
Right.
Because they're trying to basically be like almost exactly like Bitcoin, but like with some small differences that they think will make the big difference in their development, especially.
Yeah. I mean, well, throughout Litecoin's history, it's already been faster. It was programmed that way, like to be able to handle more faster as in handle more transactions, at once.
Well, it was supposed to be like a shorter time. Originally, the idea behind Litecoin was like, and I don't want to speak for them because I'm not like an expert. I've known about it for a long time. But anyway, the idea, I think, was to have faster confirmations.
Yeah,
Litecoin.
that was it.
So they have a block more frequently than every 10 minutes. I think Litecoin's is every 2.5 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the thing is, faster block times, you might get that first confirmation more quickly, but it doesn't gain the security. Basically, it needs multiple more confirmations to have the same level of security. So for example, like a Bitcoin transaction, if you're buying a cup of coffee, you consider it pretty much confirmed after like one confirmation, right? Which means the block that transaction is in is buried back one block. If you're buying a house or something, you'd probably consider it confirmed after 6 or 10 confirmations.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like degrees of security of how far back is that block buried in the history of the blockchain, and therefore how much proof of work would be required to undo that block and nullify your transaction. So the more confirmations you have, the more secure. But with Litecoin's smaller blocks or more frequent blocks, you basically need even more confirmations, like a Litecoin transaction to have the same security as a Bitcoin transaction needs maybe 16 confirmations or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. So I found it interesting that they started, that Coinbase started taking on Litecoin. In fact, I had said, and this is like one of those first times where I was like, boy, I was really wrong. And I think it was like 2014. And I mentioned this on a Patreon episode recently. And I was like in 2014 on this show, on Sovryn Tech, I was saying, look, I think this is going to be the year of Litecoin or something. Like, I think this is going to be a big deal. And kind of my major point with it was that, well, this can be a test bed for all the things that people are too afraid to do in Bitcoin, like segregated witness or something like this, right? And so I was talking about it on Patreon on the Q&A this week, and I said, I guess maybe I was just off by like 3 years, but it's still going to happen. Like that's cool. Like go ahead, put segregated witness, do all that. I think that's a fantastic thing to do with Litecoin, but now it's interesting that it seems like Litecoin might be kind of the bulwark against really a civil war. I mean, it's almost, in many ways, it's, the Switzerland or the Sweden of World War II.
It is very interesting. I mean, how these different, it's a whole ecosystem at this point, cryptocurrency, and it's almost like there's competing species of animals that are evolving different traits to adapt to the environment better. So yeah, I think it's really interesting. And there's I don't think Bitcoin will always be the first one and it'll always be the original. And there's a big, there's something to be said for that. That's very important. but, you know, maybe Bitcoin is the digital gold and there's other coins that serve different purposes in the environment. I'm not like married to the idea that like Bitcoin is the only one. I'm not like a complete Bitcoin maximalist, even though I think it'll always be important and special.
Sure. You know, Paige, I'm curious. I mean, so you do a lot of, or you have a presence in social media as far as Zcash goes. You know, I'll put it that way. Like, how often do you have to deal with the, like Stephanie called them, the Bitcoin maximalists, or I think I used to call them the Bitcoin monogamists.
Well, like, just to say something in their defense first, really quick.
Sure.
I get it that, I mean, there have been so many shit coins and scams in the cryptocurrency world.
Oh, yes.
That I really get it when, as soon as somebody hears about any altcoin except for Bitcoin, they're just like, nope, it's a scam. Because that's easier. That's like an easier way to defend yourself than to try to like do due diligence on every little coin that comes your way and then mostly find out that 95% of them are scams anyway. It's really easier to just dismiss like all other coins, including something like a hard fork of Bitcoin that would create a technically an altcoin or an altchain. So I get it when people have that mentality. Like it makes sense to me that people would get into that mindset. But at the same time, you know, I don't think Zcash is one of those things that I don't think it's smart to dismiss right away without looking into it, because it is based on, you know, this new concept of zero knowledge proof.
Well, so just real quick, and I want to, you know, hear what you have to say on that page. I mean, yeah, I respect that. In fact, honestly, I think it is every altcoin, every cryptocurrencies, every blockchain technologies, like it is on them, in my opinion. The burden of proof is on them to prove that they are not a scam. Like out of the gate, they need to do everything that they possibly can, you know, to show, no, this is something for the long haul. This is going to happen. So I can empathize with that attitude too, because every time I hear about a new one, I instantly am looking, okay, you get, you know, what is the evidence that I can look at that it's not a scam? In fact, I get asked a lot of people ask me to talk about various cryptos and blockchain stuff on this show. And I don't want to talk about them on the show because it's almost free publicity.
Yeah.
You know, for a lot of these things. Now, Zcash
you don't want to be accused of being like a pump and dumper or something.
Right. I mean, even if I rip them apart, even if I talk about it in a negative way, it's still getting it like out there.
Any press is good press.
Right. Yeah. There's no such thing as bad press. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, now Zcash is different because I've been talking about Zero Coin, which is kind of the original, the precursor of Zcash. I've been talking about that since the show started, you know, back in 2013. I mean, I've been,
and you were not on their payroll at any point.
Never. Still not.
You just thought it was an interesting project.
I just recognized, you know, how important this is, and it fit, it, you know, ticked a lot of check boxes of what I was wanting out of a technology. Yeah. So that's why I think it's different. It's not like all the other altcoins. But anyway, I mean, do you have to encounter kind of the Bitcoin maximalists a lot? How do you deal with that?
Actually not too much with Bitcoin maximalists.
Okay.
I think there is definitely some, you know, respect that a lot of people have for Zcash.
Sure.
And it's like, I think just the fact that it's so new, it's just kind of still, you know, feeling its way and like finding its place in the market. So I actually don't see too much social media stuff about anti-Zcash stuff from Bitcoin maximalists. Most of the anti-Zcash stuff are actually Monero people.
Okay.
You know, I don't know what it is. I mean, I'm sure there's like a ton of great Monero supporters out there, but like the Monero people seem to be really like harsh to Zcash.
That's interesting. Okay.
Like compared to say like the Dash community, they seem to be actually pretty friendly and like open and willing to like see what Zcash is all about, or like at least not like bash it every chance they have.
It's that bad.
It's like, I mean, at least on social media, there's a handful of trolls that are really harsh. And yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing. I don't know what their problem is, but, yeah. So Bitcoin maximalists, I think, are kind of open to the fact that Zcash is an interesting technology, and I think, you know, we have a lot of reputable people a part of our team.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge part of it, actually.
Oh, yeah. That's the first thing I look at with any new tech. What's the team?
We're not gonna, we're clearly not gonna pull a scam on you. Like, if you look at the team, there's a lot of crazy, awesome scientists and, previously, privacy, security, software, decentralization gurus. Exactly. So, I think there is just some sort of reputation that people associate with Zcash.
Sure. Yeah, and I'll just say this, to the listeners. I mean, you don't want a monoculture of anything.
Yeah.
You certainly don't want a monoculture of money.
Yeah.
And I've brought this up many, many times. Historically in the past, even just 100 years ago, or hell, even just 50 years ago, when there was less government intrusion, you could say, in the market or something, you had more currencies, not less. This notion that somehow, and you could say, well, that's because there was more countries before the world wars or something like that. It's more than that. There was a lot of guild scripts and trade scripts. I mean, all these different ideas. There was literally thousands of currencies, 100 years ago. So it would appear, with the historical evidence that we have, that the more freedom exists within a marketplace, there's more currencies, not less.
Sure.
So you do not want that monoculture. In fact, there's are you a Rick and Morty fan, Paige?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Did you watch the season 3 premiere? Did you see that one yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay. You got to check that out. It was it'll actually, it's probably best that you haven't seen it because, so they released it on April Fools this year. And everybody thought it was an April Fool's. No, it's not really released, but it was. Oh. But then the thing is, it was a cool episode. But the sad part is they said, yeah, but we don't know when we're going to release the rest of season 3. So it's it's like a big fucking tease, right? But anyway, in that, spoiler alerts, folks. And I guess, do you mind if I spoil it for you?
No,
Okay.
Fine.
Okay. All right, cool. So, Rick at the end of it, he destroys this entire, galactic federation by just setting their currency to 0 because they only had one currency.
That's awesome.
And he just, and the Federation just fell apart because nobody was getting paid.
That is so crazy.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's just, it's a nice analogy or metaphor of look, you never want a monoculture.
Yeah.
So
totally.
You want your Zcash, if you want your Monero, you want your Monero, you want your Dash, whatever Bitcoin you want it, you got it.
I mean, even forks of Zcash, there's already Z Classic, which
and
exists.
Zencash, right?
But Zen, I don't think they're launched yet.
Okay.
But actually, we were experiencing this weird bug. It was actually a security bug that was some transactions, that had to do with the prioritization code for the client, the way transactions are prioritized, with fees and stuff. Some transactions were causing nodes to crash. So it's like a DOS.
Okay.
Potentially a bad situation, and we solved this and released an update that is 1.0.8-1.
Yep. Which that's the latest, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the latest. Okay. So during this investigation of this bug, we actually collaborated with Z Classic people because they were seeing a lot of their nodes crash. And they were being affected by this bug way more than we were. So we kind of did this collaboration with them to try to solve this for the whole ecosystem, because they basically take all of the updates from Zcash and apply it to Z Classic.
Beautiful. So there's no animosity really between
Not really. The Z Classic people kind of hang out in the various Zcash channels. I think they're they basically just removed the founder's reward and think that that's a better way to have a cryptocurrency and better way to manage development of a cryptocurrency. Whereas we see the fact that people are getting paid on know that they're getting paid on a regular basis is going to be a security thing, like a safety thing. That there's going to be this development team because there's already planned out revenue for them.
Right.
Like, so we think that that's the better way to go. They think not having that is the better way to go. So,
well, made the best idea, get the greatest network effect.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly. So, yeah, it's a cool collaboration, and yeah, it was really cool to see.
Well, I can respect, or go ahead.
But I guess now that I'm talking about Z Classic, I just want to reiterate as loud as possible that Z Coin is not Z Cash.
Oh.
So many people get that mixed up.
Yeah.
And it's actually really bad because Z Coin had a really horrible bug in their code that allowed someone to generate as many coins as they could. So they got inflated by like 300,000 Z coins or something. And a lot of people are attributing, like, saying that that's a Zcash thing. Like, I've ran into so many people that are like, didn't you have that bug like a few months ago? And I'm like, no. So Zcoin does not equal Zcash. They're completely different. Zcoin is like based on Zero Coin, the original protocol.
Right.
So yeah. And yeah.
Ugly.
Yeah. It was, yeah. They're actually, I don't have similar, like, you know, good feelings that I have about them that I have with Z Classic people towards them. Yeah, I think they, you know, potentially. Yeah, I don't know.
Sure, no,
I wouldn't trust them if I don't know. That's my personal opinion.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. So, but I think that's great that you worked with Z Classic. I mean, that's the beauty of collaboration and open source.
Totally.
I mean, that you can really do that, and you know, and you can kind of verify each other and whatever. I mean, that's fantastic, and let them both thrive. I don't care.
Definitely.
So cool. Okay. Well, I think now do you want to take off the Zcash hat?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Let's party.
Boy, you know, we've got new intros coming out for episode 226, and Pixel might be a part of those. And
oh yeah.
Anyway,
she will be.
Yeah. I think people are going to love these. So there will be no intros throughout this episode. This is just going to be kind of a running monologue. Well, not monologue because I'm not alone. But in any case, there's no breaks, but I'm going to take a quick break here just to mention one of our sponsors, because I'm not actually sponsored by Zcash, but I am sponsored by someone who, if you want to keep an eye on Zcash and everything else we were talking about, even Litecoin, all these different Dash, whatever, CryptoCompare.com. They are just a great, I keep that tab open at all times. I'm always looking at it. What are the latest, greatest wallets? You know, what's the latest price? What are the trends? You know, what's going on in social media as far as all this stuff? I mean, Crypto Compare does such a great job of, you know, just being this one-stop shop to keep an eye on everything going on in cryptocurrency. It is so cool. Such a great website. And they've been a long time sponsor now for Sovryn Tech, and I'm really honored by that. And they sponsor a lot of other great shows too. So these are definitely people you want to frequent if you care about liberty, because I mean, understand when somebody sponsors Sovryn Tech, like, you know, they're really stepping into the fire because they know
takes a special sponsor.
It does. It takes someone very special because, like, I tell them, you know, when I send them, you know, the invoices and whatever, it's like, look, I will not water down. I will not, you know, even if it's a sponsor, if I feel like you're doing something I don't like, people are going to hear about it. I mean, I'm very, very, very open about that. So anyway, do appreciate the sponsors of Sovryn Tech because they are very special, unique, and wonderful people. So CryptoCompare.com, just wonderful. Paige.
Yeah, I heard about them through your show.
Yeah.
And I really like their website. I do have one request for them, however, if possible.
Yeah, put it out.
If at all possible, I know it's kind of a pain in the ass, but some people don't like to use JavaScript and their website doesn't work without JavaScript.
Oh, yeah.
So if, you know, it could be a very simple way to check prices or something, but I understand their social component of it requires a lot of JavaScript. So, you know, that's just something to think about, but I do like their website in general.
Yeah, I mean, they're really putting out great info. No, and that's a fair point. JavaScript is such, boy, I mean, that could be a whole side tangent.
Yeah,
we could talk forever about that. Like, for years, I've been telling people do use no script and everything.
Yeah.
Have that on at all times.
Yep.
Of course, Firefox is, like, this year, you know, come 2018, Firefox is going to be a totally different animal. Like across the board. They have their quantum engine and everything that they're running. I mean, it's just going to be crazy. And they're changing their add-ons and extensions. We've been talking about that on Sovryn Tech for a few months now. But I mean, like with JavaScript, it's just become such a pain in the ass to turn it off.
Yeah.
that like now I really don't tell people, it's like, I don't bother to tell them to install NoScript anymore because it's so bad.
Yeah. It's really difficult.
I mean, it almost literally seems to break the internet depending on what you do.
Right. It's almost better in the end just to use, like Privacy Badger or something like that.
Yeah.
Like it blocks some JavaScript and it's kind of like it detects which things are tracking you more so and blocks those things.
Yeah, exactly. Boy, a fun episode to do with you, Paige, at some point, and maybe this will be like a Patreon thing, which if you want to become a patron, there's hundreds of hours of content, exclusive content, and you get new content every week. I do Q&As and everything. People love it. You can just go to sovryntech.com. It takes you right to the Patreon page, and just at least $1 a month, even though people do a lot more, or quite a few people do a lot more than that. I'm honored. You can sign up for that. But something I'd love to do with you is just like you talk about what software you use, like what's your loadout, what's your default loadout.
That
I
would
think it'd be phenomenal.
Super fun.
Yeah, because I'd love to know, like even what you rock. A lot of people have asked me that question. The thing is that like it's not so cut and dry because I use a couple of different systems. Yeah. So like I could say, well, what's on my Windows machine? Yeah. What's on my other machine? Right. What is that other machine? Things like this. Yep. So I think that would be fascinating to talk with you about. Okay. All right. We'll line that up. Because do you still use your Purism laptop? I know that's a whole other subject.
Yeah. The Librem.
Yeah.
I use that. And then I use Cubes with that.
Yeah, I use Cubes OS.
Cubes is awesome.
Yes, it is. Top notch.
And speaking, like, shout out to Librem. I've had issues with communicating with the company in the past.
Yep.
However, their laptops are not affected by the AMT Intel bug.
Oh, I haven't even talked about that on the show yet.
Yeah.
That is nuts.
Yeah, it is super nuts. But Librems are apparently safe from that. So awesome.
Nice.
I don't have to worry about it.
Well, the AMT bug, more like destroyer. I will probably talk about that on next week's episode because there's not a whole lot people can do about it right now.
Right.
So like it's me talking about it. Anyway, I'll tell you this, another one, if LibreBoot, which is the computers I've been recommending for years on this show, if you have a LibreBoot computer, you also don't have anything to worry about right out of the gate. So anyway, okay. So so we'll set that up. We'll do a Patreon episode about that. I think that'd be fun. So what we're going to talk about now we're going to get into kind of our big subject for this episode. And Stephanie, of course, is here also to join us for this because she brings her genuine expertise. And because you are a PhD, you are a biochemist. And I mean, you're as legitimate as they come, if one wants to ascribe to, conventional legitimacy, in academia. And last week, I think your expertise was very helpful, and I'm sure it will be, this week as well. So the subject did you have something?
Yeah, no, I think this topic that is coming up today is probably even more relevant to my scientific background.
Yes, because you actually worked in developing things of this nature to some degree, right? Or not developing.
I did a PhD that had some neuroscience elements of it. It was a PhD in biochemistry, but there was some neuroscience. And I also went to medical school for 2 years.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying. Yes. So anyway, we're going to talk about drugs. Woo! Capital D drugs. I mean, woo. I think everybody just suddenly did a woo wherever they're listening, and they all look nuts because it's like, whoa, we're going to talk about drugs. And so now, notoriously, and Paige, you wanted to talk about this, and we actually last time you were on the show, we had said, I think we were talking about Mr. Robot, the show Mr. Robot.
Yeah, right.
And we had talked about how we were going to do a show where we talked about kind of the hacker community, and I say hacker with absolute respect. Mm-hmm. And I also do not say the word drugs in any derogatory manner as well, just to be very clear on that. But I have, especially in our circles, be it anarchist circles or hacker circles or whatever, that we run in, I think I have at least a rare, maybe not unique, relationship, with drugs and whatever. So which usually surprises people. I've handled many Q&A episodes where people have asked me about that. It's like, wait, really? You don't do this stuff or whatever? And anyway, so, we had talked about that we wanted to do this. And so now we're doing it. And I guess to start off, I will, kind of explain my position on drugs in general, and I'll hone down more what we're talking about here as far as drugs. And then we'll open this conversation right up. And
sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
this will be interesting.
Yeah.
So, first of all, what do you mean when you say drugs?
Yeah. When I say drugs, I guess I'm referring to more like Well, okay. So honestly, like I don't even like to take Tylenol. Like it takes a lot for me to even do that. Now I don't.
So the definition, the official definition of a drug, according to like dictionary or doctors, is any substance that alters your biology in some way.
Okay. All right.
Any external substance that you can put in your body and it's going to change something about your physiology.
Right. Natural or synthetic. Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously I drink copious amounts of caffeine, like a ton of it. In fact, I had some Death Wish coffee. They are not a sponsor of the show. Yeah. I shared some with Paige.
Yeah.
That is some good shit. Woo, that'll get you ready for Sovryn Tech.
I'm sipping on some jasmine green tea right now.
Yeah. All right. So we're all heavily caffeinated. So we're all drug addicts.
So yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point because usually when people say drugs, people think of illicit drugs or illegal drugs, right? The drugs that the government categorizes as, no, you can't take those. Nobody can have a permission slip to take these substances. Some people think of pharmaceutical drugs where if you do have a permission slip from a doctor, you can take them, but they're very controlled and very regulated and very high standards of quality assurance and stuff. And they're very specific as far as what they do because they have to get through this approval process from the FDA.
Right.
So people often don't think of things like caffeine and perhaps even alcohol and nicotine as drugs, usually, even though they totally are drugs. Even aspirin is a drug. Tylenol, as you said, is a drug. All of those things, yes, they may be legal and sanctioned in our society. I always joke that caffeine is like one of the most socially acceptable drug addictions. And people have theories about that because a lot of people are addicted to caffeine.
What about sugar? Is sugar technically?
Sugar, yeah. I mean, I would consider sugar a drug, because it does have the same dopamine releasing qualities as a lot of other drugs. And it can, I mean,
that's a fascinating
sugar
point.
Addiction is very real.
Yeah,
a lot of people are addicted to sugar and carbs.
I've been weaning off a sugar addiction that I've had my whole life, and it's been very difficult, but now I feel a lot better. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact,
well, right. I was shocked. Like you had black coffee this morning.
Oh yeah,
just I like how you like your clothing. I mean,
I don't know what the actual. Yes, definitely. I just picked up on that. Okay. I don't know what the actual like good amount of sugar, like minimum or maximum amount of sugar a person should be having. Obviously, it's going to vary from person to person. I do kind of just go along with what the FDA recommends just because it seems like, from like the past year or so experimenting with reducing sugar, that seems like a good level. Like you get a little bit of sugar, you can eat some fruit and get sugar from other sources. But
is there like an amount of grams of sugar that you
try to hit around 25 grams or less a day.
25 grams of sugar or less. What about carbohydrates? Because simple carbohydrates, basically you eat a piece of white bread or rice, it breaks down.
I don't eat a lot of carbs. And then the ones that I do are like pretty, I just don't eat a lot of them and they're not.
Yeah,
they don't break down into sugar as much. Wait, those are simple.
So there's carbohydrates in most of the food that we eat.
And like vegetables even, everything.
Vegetables have it, So vegetables have sugar sometimes, right? Like cucumber has like 1 gram of sugar or something like that. Yeah. Fruits have sugars, but it's all different types of sugar. So like fruits have fructose, which is a different type of sugar than maltose, which is in rice, or sucrose, which is like table sugar.
Yep.
So there's different kinds of sugars, but basically the carbs that are kind of like demonized in popular culture, like white bread, like basically anything white and like refined grains, white sugar, white bread, white rice, white potatoes, that kind of stuff is are carbohydrates that are rapidly converted into sugar in your blood and can raise blood sugar in people of like diabetes or blood sugar control problems. So I would say those kind of count as sugar. Yeah. I actually try to hit under a certain amount of just total carbohydrates. Okay. I try not to eat foods that have added sugar in them. And I try to eat foods that are pretty naturally like low in sugars. But I consider like bread and sugar to be the same thing.
Yeah. What about like the more complex carbs? Do those convert to sugar as well?
Yeah, complex carbs are interesting because obviously it's a spectrum from simple to complex.
Yeah.
But when people say complex carbs, they're usually talking about like sweet potatoes or like natural foods that have some fiber in them, because fiber slows down the conversion of starch into sugar in your body. And fiber also, we're now realizing from science, feeds the gut bacteria in your guts, and that has beneficial effects on your blood sugar, because then they produce, when the bacteria in your guts ferment fiber. Basically, like, your body can't break down the fiber. Fiber is like chains of sugars that can't be broken down by your body because you don't have the right enzymes. But once they get to your colon, those bacteria can break them down because they do have the right enzymes. And when they do break those down, they make chemical messengers like short chain fatty acids that then go to your own cells in your body and tell your fat cells to store less fat, or tell your pancreas to control your blood sugar better. So fiber is helpful for like weight loss and controlling diabetes and stuff. And also it slows down the conversion of just any starch into sugar. So fiber is considered good. And the more fiber a food has, the more of a, quote, complex carbohydrate it's considered.
So eat your Wheaties? Is that the message here? No.
I don't know, because Wheaties is made of wheat, right?
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Wheaties is made of whole wheat, right? So it has a little bit of fiber in there from the grain, what is it called? The bran of the grain. There's like a part of the grain called the bran that's like more rich in fiber, and also vitamins, vitamin E and stuff like that, B vitamins. But is that like, even whole wheat has relatively little fiber in comparison to something like cabbage or Brussels sprouts. You know what I mean? Like, the ratio of starch to fiber is still pretty high. Like, there's a lot more starch than there is fiber in Wheaties than there is in something like a comparable amount of Brussels sprouts.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, for complex carbohydrates, I would say like vegetables is what I would go for. Even root vegetables like sweet potatoes or beets, or like even maybe potatoes sometimes, but that's like kind of pushing a little bit into the less complex carbs category. Sure. But some people, for some people, their metabolism is such that they just run a lot better on like a more carbohydrate rich diet, than and more like low in fat. For some people, they run a lot better on like a high fat, low carbohydrate diet. Yeah. And I'm one of those people that does a lot better. And I've done a lot of experimenting. Yeah. I'm one of those people that does better on the high fat, low carb kind of end of things. So that's where I try to keep it.
Cool.
Sure. So sugar is a drug.
So yeah, sugar. That was a tangent.
Yeah,
sorry.
No. That was good.
That was interesting.
Yeah, that was a very nice tease. I like that.
But yeah, I would consider sugar a drug. There's been a number of like studies in popular science in the past couple of years that have just basically compared sugar to things like cocaine and heroin, and the addictive properties and the brain juice that it releases, the neurotransmitters that create a intense sensation of reward, which is what is associated with addiction, are very similar to, quote, hard drugs like heroin and cocaine when you eat sugar.
Sure.
Or when you play video games, or when you constantly check your email or Facebook over and over again.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So basically, one of the things, a common theme in recreational drugs or drugs that make people feel happy or euphoric, is that they cause your brain to release neurotransmitters. Dopamine is a big one. Serotonin is a big one. What's the other one? Norepinephrine. And there's probably a few other ones.
Which make you feel good.
Which make you feel happy.
Right.
Yeah. That's create a sensation of happiness and reward, so that when you feel that reward, you're motivated to do it again to get more reward. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's the theory. I guess the theory behind addiction is like people are constantly seeking the reinforcement of that reward sensation. And so they keep going to the substance.
Right.
But with most substances, you can build up a tolerance, or you can just wear down your levels of neurotransmitters so that you don't get as strong of a reward, and you can never get as much as that first exposure.
Yep.
But you keep seeking it out, and you keep wanting that feeling like your first high. So that's the theory behind addiction. Now, there is the rat park experiment. Were you going to bring that up, Brian?
No, I wasn't. But
so
go ahead.
Whenever we mention these conventional theories of addiction, like the conventional theory of addiction is basically like certain substances cause the release of these brain chemicals that are extremely rewarding and extremely addictive. And if you get exposed once, you're probably hooked, and you're going to be hooked forever unless you get forced into like a treatment program where you can't access this stuff. Now, that really does not apply to all substances. And in fact, it may be a lot more complicated than that because early childhood experiences, especially trauma, cause humans and animals, to self-medicate with certain substances that produce those rewarding sensations. And so addictions are more likely to develop when there is a background of trauma that the organism has experienced. Basically, there was an experiment called Rat Park in the 1970s that's very interesting, and it's often cited in addiction literature, where, in most studies, they would take rats and they would put them in a small, confined cage with no toys or really nothing to do, no other rats around. And so the rat is sad, right? The rat is not very stimulated or happy. And then they would give him a water bottle that was full of like a little bit of cocaine in the water or heroin or something or or sugar. And the rat would just constantly drink from that water bottle, even at the expense of drinking regular water, and it would thirst to death, so it would just keep going for the drug. But when you give rats a park to play in, like a Disneyland with lots of toys, other rats, lots of space for them to run around and play. And then, oh, by the way, there's also a water bottle with cocaine over here and also a regular water bottle. They don't go for the cocaine. They go for the regular water. They don't become addicted in the same way that the sad rats did.
Yeah.
Okay.
So obviously there's a component of the psychological state, and happiness and trauma have something to do with people's propensity to seek medication in certain substances.
Yeah.
So that is an interesting baseline to run off of.
Yeah.
And in fact, we're gonna go to a quick sponsor on that, because let me tell you, even though this isn't something that I literally ingest, I mean, maybe I ate a comic book once, but this is definitely something I'm addicted to, and that's Star Wars. Now, I know people are like, what the hell are you talking about? Is Disney sponsoring Sovryn Tech? No, not at all. What is sponsoring Sovryn Tech is the Resist the Empire podcast, which is an awesome, and I mean it, fucking awesome podcast that's all about Star Wars, but from a liberty-oriented perspective. Really, really unique stuff. This is the kind of thing, I wish I thought of doing it, but I'm more than happy to let, Roger and the guys over there, Resist the Empire podcast, take the reins, because they're the real deal, real Star Wars fans. I know they have the same passion I do for the subject. For some people, I know they've said Star Wars is their anti-drug, right? That was actually a meme that was going around for a while, but, that's inferring that drugs are bad. And certainly I don't think a liberty-oriented podcast would say such a thing regardless. Anyway, it's a fun podcast. You want to check it out. If you love Star Wars, if you love liberty, this is the absolute podcast you want to be listening to. They do all kinds of fun stuff. They do breakdowns of characters and where they fit on the political spectrum and everything. That's really cool. And in fact, follow them on social media, because the memes that they do are hilarious. I'm in awe, actually. And I'm serious, because honestly, a lot of memes I don't get very impressed by. I get impressed by the ones that they do. So they're worth following, on social media. But, Resist the Empire podcast.com is the website. You want to check that out. It's in the show notes as well. You can find it in the appendix, if you want to look them up. But just a tremendous podcast. There are a few episodes in. I love it. Maybe someday, actually, I got name dropped in the latest episode, in episode 7 of it. And that was pretty cool. So anyway, check that out. Resist the Empire podcast. And boy, if you want to get addicted to something, rock and roll some Star Wars, baby. It's always a good time. Of course, Stephanie hates Star Wars, but that's all right. I have all the love in the world for it that makes up for it.
Right on.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate Star Wars, but it sounds like a good podcast, I'll admit. I like the name.
Yeah.
I'm all for Resisting the Empire.
Yeah. It's by the same guys that do the Lava Flow podcast. I mean,
isn't that just one guy? It's Roger Paxton.
Well,
right?
It's Pax Libertas. Yeah, it's Roger, but and of course he's fantastic.
He's an amazing podcaster.
Yes.
Yeah, he's really good.
High end, high quality.
You've played clips on your show from him,
and I don't do that often
and you
for
don't
other
do that
podcasts.
For anybody.
That's a
big compliment.
You got to have something going for you if you're doing that. So anyway, all right, now let's get into what I meant by drugs when I say the word drugs and what I was talking about. But that whole thing about addiction, and actually the sugar conversation was fascinating, but like the whole thing about addiction, that's kind of important to bring up. When I talk about drugs, I guess I do mean more of the illicit type, and let me caveat again. Look, I don't care what people do. They can do whatever the hell they want. It's just not things that I do.
Do you particularly care about the legal status?
No.
Like, do you avoid illegal drugs because you are afraid of getting arrested or something?
There's a possibility there's something unconscious there going on, but
I think that would affect anyone, really.
Yeah, consciously or unconsciously.
It doesn't seem to stop people from smoking pot. I don't know. I mean, for marijuana, like, it just doesn't seem to stop anyone.
Right. But
that's true. Especially recent days.
Yeah.
But I guess that's because it's more legal.
Yeah, the public perception is changing, but I just remember, like, even before there were any states that had any kind of legalization or decrim, like, people didn't care.
Yeah.
Just like, we've been doing this since the 1970s.
You wouldn't, like, go out into a park and smoke weed, but I think a lot of people are comfortable doing that now.
Yeah.
Even if it's still illegal.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so, I mean, the reason I'd say that I don't think it's that big of a deal is because I also don't drink and I don't smoke, cigarettes. Like, I don't, and like I was saying earlier, like, I'm even reticent to take Tylenol. Yeah. Obviously, I don't have a problem with caffeine, though, but regardless, I mean...
Sugar? What about sugar? Are you into that? Do you do sugar?
I do sugar. I mean, I can take it or leave it. If it's there, it's there.
I would not say you are a sugar addict.
No, yeah. I mean, if peanut butter's a drug, I'm in trouble. But,
peanut butter's very addictive.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, just real quick, like, is cheese a drug?
Well, so people say about cheese and also about wheat that they contain certain proteins that break down in your body to these endorphin-like peptides. Endorphins are natural opioid-like peptides that your body produces that relieve pain and cause a feeling of euphoria or happiness, like a little one, not a big one. But like endorphins are what people claim when they get a runner's high. Your body produces a lot of endorphins. Or when they engage in like BDSM, like the sub claims to get like all these endorphins and like this euphoric feeling. So endorphins are like your body's natural happy chemicals.
Sure.
And people claim that cheese has these proteins that break down into endorphins that will activate those receptors in your body and cause almost a feeling of euphoria like that. So I think you could fairly call cheese a drug.
Yeah, and that it is literally addictive. I mean,
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and I know you got to be careful because a lot of people can then suddenly say, well, all food's addictive. Like not all food's addictive, all food's a drug. Like
all
people
food is used as a drug. People use it the way people use food. Some people have a bigger propensity to do this than others. Food is absolutely used as a drug. It's used to create a certain feeling. Have you ever heard the phrase comfort food? Well, what do you think of? Mac and cheese, things like that. Like there's a lot of cheese in that, and there's also a lot of wheat in that, and there's also a lot of carbohydrates. When you eat a lot of carbohydrates, your gut releases a bunch of serotonin. Serotonin is like a happy neurotransmitter. It affects your brain. It makes you sleepy. It makes you happy and fat, dumb, and happy, right? After you eat a big meal.
Right.
So, yeah, people absolutely use food as a drug. Food is a tricky one, though, because with most substances, we don't require them in order to survive. But you can go cold turkey on alcohol or any other drug, basically, that's out there. But you cannot go cold turkey on food. You have to eat to survive. What are you going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, before we get lost in the weed and everything goes up in smoke, I do want so I guess more particularly really what I'm talking about here, and some people could make the case that maybe caffeine does this, and yet I consume caffeine. Like the literal, the mind altering, the seemingly, and I use the word seemingly, reality bending, hallucinogenics, and psychedelics, all this, like those are the ones, and alcohol. I don't do alcohol or smoking either. I think actually probably my, why I never got into smoking, I think it was just so damned expensive. Even when I was young, it doesn't cost as much as it does today, but I mean, that's a damned expensive habit,
Yeah. Most drugs are expensive except for caffeine and food.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, and, alcohol.
Yeah, sugar is really cheap.
Yeah, sugar, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, alcohol, like I've drank at various points in my life. But it was always like, it was while I was in the military. So obviously very traumatic, situation. I did when I was younger, but I told that story before, but.
Yeah, when you drank in those situations in the past, I know there were very few of them, but looking back on it, would you say that you were looking for some escape or self-medication, or were you just doing it because everyone else was doing it, sort of to fit in or socially?
Well, okay, so as far as with drinking goes, and then we'll talk more about like the harder drugs or something, I don't know. People are going to have problems with whatever term I use, so I guess I'll just say it. But anyway, with drinking, like the first time I drank when I was a teenager, was, there's just this mystique around it. It's like, well, yeah, everybody does. Not that everybody does it, but like, yeah, everybody kind of does it. So what the hell's the big deal? Like, and you want to find out for yourself. And when I found out for myself, like, and I've told this story before, I'll just say it very in brief. I had the reputation as a young person of being a walking encyclopedia, and I couldn't think of answers very quickly when I knew the answers. And so I attributed that to the alcohol. And also when I went to the refrigerator to get some pizza, my hand literally missed the handle of the refrigerator, and I just bugged out. I was like,
that's scary.
I was like, what the fuck? I'm like
you became very uncoordinated.
Right. Yeah. I'm not out of control, but in my head, I'm like, Brian, you're out of control. Holy shit. Calm down.
Losing all these basic functions.
Right. Yeah. Like I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
So, for somebody that, has such composure and anyway, so that was a huge turnoff to me. That's actually
really interesting. I mean, sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's okay.
But I think that's interesting to talk about. Like, I've experienced a really similar thing, like a feeling of panic, of losing basic functions, and like, am I going to be dependent on other people to babysit me? Like, I've basically regressed to a baby that needs to have things done for me, and I don't like that feeling at all.
Sure.
When I was drunk or something.
Loss of self-control.
Yeah, loss of self-control,
Mentally,
loss of
physically.
basic functions. Like, there was a voice in my head that was like, "Oh my God, you're pathetic. You can't even do this. You're fucking everything up." Like, and I guess that's kind of scary to think about. I have this inner taskmaster that says that when I try to relax and have a little alcohol, but
right.
But nonetheless, it was there, and it definitely put me off from drinking anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think the main thrust of this conversation is going to be alcohol. So we can get off of this in a second. But I mean, that was kind of my turnoff with alcohol. It's like, I don't like not having control.
Mm-hmm. And what was your experience growing up with drugs? Like, did you see your parents, or did you see a lot of people? How did your peers and your family like use drugs? My
parents never, but my older siblings nonstop. I mean, like my brother.
What kind of drugs did your older siblings?
Everything. Mm-hmm. Everything. Sheets of acid, the whole business. I mean, like there is no. It's not like I was never exposed to them, or I didn't know what the hell they were. So that was a big part of it. I mean, the other thing with alcohol, and this is the last thing I'll say on alcohol, was that, and I'd love to have the conversation with people at some point about this, and honestly, especially women, is like, I find the issue of consent when one is drunk, or even with drugs in general, like where I feel like there's got to be a point where consent goes, like a person really can't consent anymore because they're so trashed or something like that. And I don't mean that as disrespect. I'm just saying, like, you're not in the same frame of mind that you normally are. Yeah. Let's talk about this. Like, at what point is it no longer consent? And like, cause I don't think that's a very easy answer, but that's a whole other conversation.
Oh yeah. I've had some interesting experiences with that. Yeah.
Sure. Right. That I worry about. So that's another, for me, another knock against, messing around with it. But I totally get why people do it, especially, women, especially, like, society has them so repressed. Like, I totally understand why maybe they want some kind of social lubricant of some kind.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate like a beer in a social situation.
Right.
That's for sure.
Right.
I've actually, like, just to touch on alcohol from my perspective, I was like kind of having a beer kind of every night sort of thing. Like, I've never enjoyed getting drunk. I always like got like nauseous, and like it was just very easy for me to feel very uncomfortable. And from that, I quickly found, was able to sort of determine the level at which I should stop drinking, and was always pretty like responsible with that. Like, you know, a handful of times in college, and, you know, maybe once in the past like 5 years I've had too much to drink. But yeah, it always like because like it ended up affecting me so intensely, and like I got nauseous, it was very easy to be like, all right, I definitely don't want to be there, and like at a certain point just stop drinking.
Yeah, right.
Whereas some other people don't have that
they don't have
ability.
that cutoff.
Yeah, they don't have that recognition of when they've had enough, and if they have another drink, it's probably going to make them sick, or, you know.
That's really interesting that you say that, Paige, because that's like one of the defining characteristics of addiction, when people do a behavior even though there are negative consequences that are starting to affect them, but they just can't stop, even though they know that it's going to affect them badly. They just compulsively keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so that's alcohol. We can move on from that.
Oh, actually, I was going to say, you brought up about the women, Brian, and alcohol. Have you ever heard of a wine mom?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like a lot of people have. It's a thing where, like, you know, a lot of these like moms with young kids, like they get either alone or with other moms, like they get together and they have wine, and it's like, oh, can't wait for wine. There's even a product that's like, it was on Shark Tank, which is a sippy cup for adults that contains wine that you can bring to your picnic with your kids.
Oh, no.
And it was like selling like hotcakes.
Yeah.
And it was made by these two wine moms, for lack of a better. I'm trying not to be derogatory with that, but I'm just saying, like, it is a common thing where the stress of being a parent is so much, and one of the only socially acceptable ways to blow off steam is to maybe get together with another mom who understands what that's also like, and get some wine on board and relax a little bit.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So the drugs that, you know, I think that more particularly here, again, that we're going to get into, I think would probably be LSD, MDMA, you know, mushrooms, DMT. Yeah. I mean, I could, you know.
So you're talking about hallucinogenic drugs that are often. So why are those drugs grouped together and called psychedelics, Paige? Do you know the answer to that?
I think, I don't know if there is like a scientific answer or anything like that. But I think it's just the effect, more of a dramatic effect and change of perspective that people have. Like, you know, you're going into a different state. Whereas with like cannabis, like, you get a different perspective. But you kind of like are still able to ground yourself in most situations. And like most people are able to like even like smoke a little weed and go for a drive. Like most people are not gonna like be like completely out of it,
right?
And, like,
you're not going to see a white elephant charging across the road when there is none.
Or purple wombats in the bathtub. Sure. Yeah. I mean, and I also, you know, I don't, you know, smoke marijuana or anything like that either. Like I just don't do any of that. I'm other than, I guess, caffeine, and depending upon cheese and sugar, how we want to define all that. I mean, like, I'm an absolute teetotaler.
Yeah. I'm not a cannabis consumer, but does cannabis cause a sense of time distortion ever? Like time is passing more slowly?
I think it depends.
I know there's different strains of it.
Yeah, there's
different psychoactive.
Certainly different strengths.
Yeah.
Sure.
I wouldn't say it's super intense compared to like psychedelics. I guess a note on cannabis is, from my perspective, again, is I used to be a really heavy consumer of cannabis, especially when I first started, like in college time, or, you know, end of high school, starting of college. And, only I would say within the past year that I've drastically reduced it, and I feel way more alert. Like, I basically use it to like be able to fall asleep easier at night.
Right.
And like, I don't smoke it during the day at all anymore. And I just feel way better. And I know that's not gonna, you know, it's different for everyone, but like, if you are like, just a heads up, if you're a cannabis user and you're just like groggy and stuff all the time, just like try not smoking it during the day. I know it can be hard at first, but just like, I don't know, do something else instead, like drink more caffeine or like kind of offset it with some other drug just to like help you wean off of it. But like, it can definitely really affect people really intensely.
Yeah, I mean, that alertness aspect would bother me because like I'm the kind of person that literally I don't wear, I mean, and this might not sound connected, but I assure you it is, at least for me. Like I don't even wear sandals because like at any given moment I need to be able to run.
You need to get out.
Yeah, like I need to go, like or something. And so like I'm always, I won't wear anything open toe or something because you can't leap a fence or some shit. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I know it sounds odd.
You want to be prepared for in case you need all your faculties on board. You need maximum alertness.
Yes. Yeah. So that lack of alertness that you described, Paige, would be an issue for me.
No, there's a theory that I kind of agree with, that the reason the socially acceptable addictions are caffeine and nicotine, and we'll talk about alcohol in a minute, but caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol are generally the socially sanctioned ones. Caffeine and nicotine both like hype you up and make you more productive, more focused. And so there's this idea that because of, call it capitalism or whatever, or just the Puritan work ethic or the value that our society places on work, the drugs that contribute to a greater productivity and ability to work are the ones that are considered okay. And then with alcohol, it does not make you more productive. However, it's generally only acceptable to do on the weekends when you need to unwind. Mm-hmm. And also, alcohol is very good at numbing emotions, especially if you feel sad or feel whatever. It's very good at just kind of temporarily like lobotomizing you. And so I think that's the reason why it is considered socially okay, because so many people have feelings that they want to get away or they want to be able to get away from.
Okay, well, 2 quick points on alcohol. One is that historically it actually is a slave drink. Like literally it is something that was, because it had barley and all this different stuff, it was something given to the workers.
That's interesting.
Like for building the pyramids. I'm talking about real slaves. Yeah. People that were conquered. Okay.
Yeah, but you think of like the person who works in a factory, your person in middle America who works in a factory and
but they're not slaves.
Can't wait to work at a can't wait to go home on Friday night and have a 6-pack of beer,
Right, but just because they pay taxes, they're not slaves. Let me make that clear. So anyway, and I mean...
No, they're not, but there's elements of that lifestyle that you could compare.
Sure. Okay. But yeah. But it being something for the workers, yeah, that makes sense. The second part is that alcohol was a big deal, especially wine, because it was the only safe thing to drink in lots of parts of the world. Right. Like literally water. The only, water, you didn't dare touch water because you could die, from what you were drinking. So I want to be sensitive to that. I understand. I'm fully cognizant of the history of alcohol, why it's so prevalent. And sometimes it's for a good thing. Other times it's for building pyramids.
Another component of kind of the work ethic, which that a lot of people used to use, especially in Mexico and South America, is cocaine and coca leaves, chewing on coca leaves. They attribute a lot of like the Mayan pyramids to being like the workers just chewing coca leaves. It suppresses your appetite, so you don't need to eat as much. I've actually done like coca leaves pretty regularly in the past. And it's great. It's so like, it's nothing like cocaine, like, which I've also done and like definitely don't like suggest doing unless, you're not going to get addicted to it or something. But, coca leaves are a completely different animal. It just like, it's like caffeine almost, but a little higher, like you're a little more motivated.
So I've been tempted to try these because actually I've said in the past, whenever the drug subjects come up, I said, look, if I was ever going to do a drug, I'd do cocaine because I want something that actually like hypes me up or does make me more productive. I don't want something that slows me down. I don't have that, issue, to where I need that or anything.
It makes you super alert and like, Yeah, you can just kind of go. You're ready to go, and you just keep going.
All right. Well, maybe we'll do a report back on that or something. We'll see how that goes. But
do you need to do you crash afterwards? Do you need to replenish?
You do crash eventually, but at the end of the day, I never replenished. I only did it once. The thing with coca leaves is it's leaves, so you can't eat too much of it or you're shitting leaves. Like your stomach can't process that. So it kind of has a natural upper limit.
Yeah, that's
which
interesting.
is nice.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So kind of back to the psychedelics, I guess. Yeah. Now, these are very popular in the hacker community, in a lot of communities.
Yeah.
Now, with a lot of drugs, for me, the problem I will have with them is the marketing that gets put around them. I can instantly disprove is bullshit.
Yeah.
Even not, I don't know if these get necessarily classified as psychedelics like ayahuasca and things like this. In fact, I did a Patreon episode with MK recently where we talked about a lot of these different, some of these issues. So I'm happy to break it down more here as well. And when they say, oh, well, this will take off 10 years of therapy, if you ingest this,
I have heard that literal quote about ayahuasca. It's like having 10 years of therapy in one day.
Right.
And to me, that is utter bullshit. There's no shortcut.
Right.
Maybe some of these drugs have properties that will allow you to open up emotionally and loosen up some of the walls that you've put up around painful past experiences and emotions. I believe they have some of those qualities, but especially if you're not doing them under the supervision of an actual therapist, if you're just doing it kind of alone and you're floundering around, or maybe with a shaman who doesn't know necessarily what are their qualifications, right? There's no shortcut to bypassing 10 years of therapy.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
Right. Yeah. So, and we might talk more about that in a minute. But another bit of marketing that goes around, it's well, LSD is great because Steve Jobs took it and he says that that's what, made him who he was. Mm-hmm. And well, look, and I don't mean to be mean, folks, but, listeners, but I'm surrounded by people that take LSD. Now, I'm not saying in the studio. I'm saying in my, the geographic area of New Hampshire that I live in, I'm surrounded by people that take LSD, and none of them is Steve Jobs. In fact, they wouldn't know an entrepreneurial pursuit if it bit him on the ass. Okay.
The same is said about dropping out of high school, right? Oh, Bill Gates dropped out of high school, right? Well, most people who drop out of high school are not Bill Gates.
Yeah. Well, Bill Gates, he dropped out of Harvard, but
right.
Right. But what's his name there?
Mark Zuckerberg.
No. 2001 Space Odyssey, Kubrick, Stanley Kubrick, he dropped out of high school.
Yeah.
But anyway, anytime that marketing just drives me nuts, when I hear that. And so when people tell me those things, and then I'm but I know that's not true. I can see the evidence that these claims aren't really accurate. So then I'm also not really enthused, to take a lot of these things. But the bottom line is that there's people who say it does help them quite a bit. Steve Jobs did say it. Lots of other people will say it in the hacker community and everything. And they do take it. And they, again, they attribute a lot of it to their success, and it allows them to get by. And so, what do I do with that? What do I do with that information? Why does the hacker community say, or the tech community, the tech world, whatever, why are they so big on taking a lot of these psychedelics? Why is that, such a thing? I mean, what do you think about that, Paige?
I think it's not, I think it's just because they're a subculture of the rest of the world. I think everyone, there's going to be a large portion of any culture, maybe excluding super religious cultures or something like that, that are very adamant about taking psychedelics at least once in your life, or maybe a few times. So I think it's just when people do it, they realize that it's some experience that's really mind opening to them, and regardless if it has a concrete effect on how they kind of move forward after that, it's still this, they're happy that they did it, and they want other people to kind of have that same aha moment, or just seeing the world from a different perspective. That's what it comes down to. In terms of psychedelics, I really appreciate them for, especially in what Bill Hicks calls heroic doses.
Heroic.
They make you extremely vulnerable, and they put you in a state where you have to like question everything around you. And I think for a lot of people that can be really beneficial, like especially if you know that, you know, maybe you're not so vulnerable that you're doing it by yourself, or maybe maybe you have someone else around you that can take care of you and that you can trust. But like just like putting yourself into that state voluntarily is really rewarding in the end, because you know like that your mind can like go through such a crazy trip and like just come out of it, you know, even if it's a bad experience. Like a lot of people have bad trips.
Sure, right.
But in the end, a lot of people are still happy that it happened to them. Like they're still happy they went through that, because they like something, even if it was a bad experience, they came out of it okay, and they're able to then kind of move on from that, or like build off of that and realize the next steps that they need to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge proponent of trying to see the world in new ways. In fact, I'm kind of reminded of like Robin Williams in Dead Poets Society, where he's like, you know, stand on top of the desk and look around, you know, look at the world in a new way. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's of course it's very important to be able to do that, because it does shake something inside you. You know, some creative or imaginative or, you know, personal something like wakes up. And I can really understand that for a lot of people, kind of like I was saying earlier, like I understand why, you know, women, you know, maybe have a beer or, you know, or drink or whatever, you know, for that social lubricant or something, because society, culture does put so many pressures on people, that they recognize either consciously or unconsciously or whatever, that, you know, they can't snap out of it. Like they can't even imagine thinking outside of that societally created paradigm that gets put on them. And so I can understand like what you're saying, that these drugs can like really break you out of that. Right? I mean, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And just like give you, I mean, there's so many things that could happen that could come out of it. So I'll tell a short story about the last time I did LSD, and it was I think I got higher than I ever have on LSD. And I was with two people that I recently started dating. So they were a couple. And I was like starting to date them as like a threesome. They were living together. They had been dating for many years, and we were longtime friends. And I was just kind of entering back into the picture, and we just thought we'd give this a shot. And so we all did LSD together, and I had this like crazy perspective where I could see like the energy between us, and I was getting extremely like I was just feeling really, at some points feeling really just insecure about like their strength. Like I could see how strong their connection was with each other, and like me trying to like form my own connections with them, my own energy with them. And like in the end, like during that trip, I like was able to sort of go back to the fact that, oh, like they've been together for so long. Obviously they're going to have such a strong connection. Like, and that's okay. Like, I'm so happy that they love each other that much. And like with that, I think it was just like a good reassuring situation of like, you know, putting myself into this really vulnerable state where I knew that they had a very strong connection with each other. And,
and you accepted the fact that yours was still forming.
Yeah. And I was able to still come to those terms. And even after the fact, like telling them this story and like being able to develop this conversation around like, maybe that was a suppressed feeling that I was having, and like the drugs kind of like let that come out.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Like, let me ask you this. Do you think you could have had that same realization and talked about that with them and had those conversations without the aid of the drugs? Or
perhaps. I think maybe it wouldn't have been so intense and so obvious.
So visual.
Yeah. So yeah, the visual was a huge help. Like I could literally see like beams of light connecting us all.
Well, let me ask you about that. I mean, like, and believe me, no judgment in your answer. You answer however you feel.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, yeah. So, like, was it just kind of like was the trip? You know, was the LSD just like creating a visual of what was going on in your head, or like, do you think you were really kind of like seeing something? Like, what was?
No, it was definitely a visual. Like, yeah, it was definitely what I had been seeing in my head, and
it was a projection from what was in your head.
Yeah,
it wasn't. Yeah, okay.
So you're not basically Brian's asking, do you think there's energy floating around between people all the time, and it just enabled you to see it?
I mean, I can sort of believe that there's some sort of like energy attraction between people. Like, I don't know.
There's
like,
definitely...
I'm kind of on the fence with that stuff.
Sure,
like,
sure.
I feel like, you know, love between people is some sort of like energy force of some sort. Like,
I think there's some chemical and electromagnetism.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that there's aspects of that. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay. All right.
But another thing about LSD is a lot of people say you shouldn't look at yourself in the mirror because it can be really like scary, and like you kind of like see yourself for who you are. And during that same trip, I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like,
Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary.
No, I was like, you look so cool. Like, holy shit. Like, your hair is so awesome. And like, I was like flexing in the mirror, and it was like, it was really awesome.
Well, then I guess the statement's true, because I think you're an awesome person. That is the real you.
And I do sort of agree that, like, I've known people that I think actually one of the other people in that threesome, he had looked at himself in the mirror and saw like not a good thing. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people. They kind of like I don't know like how accurate it is, obviously, but like if you already have these subconscious like bad feelings about yourself, they kind of just like come out and become extremely visual when you're tripping.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's what I'm getting is that it translates thoughts that maybe have been suppressed or are hard to access into visual images that are impossible to ignore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And it actually goes kind of together, I think, like what you were describing with the triangle of energy between the three people, and then looking at yourself, and you accepted the fact that it was okay. You felt a little insecure about it, but then you came around to the realization, but that of course they had a stronger connection because they had been together for longer, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And then you looked in the mirror and you thought, oh, I'm awesome. And so all of that is like self-acceptance coming to light.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, I think that goes together really well. Yeah. So it sounds like that trip was a positive experience.
It was really super intense. I think in the end it actually was too long, like me and this guy.
How long did it last?
I think like 8 or 10 hours.
Wow.
So we did it like, it was basically, we stayed up all night. We did it at nighttime. The girl, she passed out actually. I think she had some crazy dreams, me and this guy, we were just like laying on their couch, like, when is this, like, eventually it became too long and we were like, crap, like, I wish this would end already. But like when you're coming down and everything isn't like, things like you still like, you kind of like get these like flashbacks where things start ramping up again and things start moving and, you know, all of that. And you're like, God, I just kind of want to go to sleep now. But we didn't have anything to do the next day. So it wasn't, you know. So
that was a very beneficial, I mean, that really sounded like a beneficial experience for you in that case.
I do think, like LSD and mushrooms and DMT is a similar effect. DMT is a little like more intense.
But shorter, right?
But way shorter, like 15 minutes, half an hour.
It's not a whole weekend commitment.
No. Yeah.
Okay, well, let me ask, I mean, why did you start taking these? And go as far back as you want. You know, you could say, well, like, I heard my mother yelling while I was in the womb, and it was so terrible. I know.
I first took LSD and mushrooms in college because I wanted to see what it was like. And I went to art school, so other people were doing them. So yeah, it was.
You probably wouldn't have gotten like a tuition if you didn't take them going to an art school. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it was just curiosity, and I don't think anything was as profound. Like, definitely later in life when I became more comfortable with myself and, just like my subconscious, I definitely appreciated psychedelics more.
Now, would you consider yourself right now a religious person or a spiritual person?
No.
Can you describe a little bit about your spiritual beliefs or lack thereof?
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of going back to the whole energy thing, I think perhaps there's some sort of like chemical connection between people. But I don't really have any like strong beliefs around that.
Okay. That's interesting to hear, because one of the common themes I've noticed with people who are really interested in psychedelics is that sometimes when they get interested in psychedelics, they become more religious or more spiritual.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like they see God or something, and they suddenly are aware of this connection that they think exists between everything. And
I think perhaps that is just them failing to sort of see the metaphor that actually is. I think it's more of like, I see that stuff when I'm tripping too, but I see it more as like a metaphor for like, you know, we are connected because we're all humans and we all have like similar brain chemistry and all of that. And like,
and we depend on our environment for things to live and to. Yeah.
And we're social creatures and all of that. So I think people just sort of take that metaphor a little too far, perhaps.
That's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah, that really is, because, I mean, that's another thing that happens a lot. I mean, you know, there's this old saying that, you know, there's no atheists at raves. Until they leave, then they become an atheist again. We could probably talk about some raves here.
That's a different perspective, that's for sure.
Well, to be honest, that was one of the things that Brian and I have talked about in the past that kind of annoyed us, because it was like, wait a minute, this person suddenly started embracing what really seems to us like magical thinking. But do we just not get it because we didn't do these drugs? Would we become like suddenly religious if
You probably wouldn't. I definitely do love when you're tripping and you see like fractals everywhere and everything is kind of melded into this one big fractal, and like it's like it makes you sort of feel like spiritual, and you're like, holy crap, everything's connected. But then you're in that state, and then you're not in that state, and you're like, okay, that was a metaphor for like other things that I was thinking about.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, what I'm hearing from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that like the, you know, when you're on this stuff, you are like kind of almost your mind's eye is just interpreting the world in a way that
it almost sounds like dreaming, but not, different.
Yeah.
Because in dreams there are tons of metaphors.
Yeah.
But you don't always remember your dreams.
And in fact, DMT is naturally produced in your brain, especially when you're dreaming or during REM or something like that.
Right.
Or even in like near-death experiences, your body releases DMT. So I think there is kind of like a connection between a dream state and psychedelics.
And DMT is produced in the pineal gland or the pineal gland. I never know how to pronounce it. I'll go with pineal because pineal sounds a little like penal or penis. But the pineal gland is a tiny structure in your brain that's kind of like back into your head, but like almost in between the eyes and the center, and like the center of the brain. So then when people say third eye, that's what they mean. It's like almost a third eye that's in the middle of your head.
Yeah.
And when they say that drugs like open your third eye, that's like, there's a connection to that.
Yeah, there is.
Okay. So like now when you like the experience you were just describing, and that was with LSD, right?
Yep.
Okay. You were with a couple of people, old friends, people that you trusted quite a bit.
Sure.
Now, this is another one of the things is that, like, I hear, you know, you had a tremendous experience of self-realization, you know, when you were doing this. And you talked earlier about how, like, these, you know, psychedelics and whatever else can really help people, like, break out of, you know, their own little mental traps, socially conditioned or otherwise, or patterns. like I genuinely, like, I think I can understand that. I think I can get that. Yeah. And I'm not in any way saying that because I don't take these drugs that somehow I've got it all figured out, so I don't need them. I'm superior. I don't feel that way at all. Like, not even close. But, you know, when I hear that, I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But then shouldn't you be doing it in situations like you described where you're with very trusted people, maybe even people, you know, you love or care about or whatever, or in conditions, not necessarily alone, but in an environment
that's going to set you up for gaining that self-knowledge.
Yes, yeah. Right. That's conducive to the healing or to the growth or whatever. Yep. And like, I get that, but that's not, again, it comes down to that marketing. That's not how it gets sold. It's like, no, you need to do this at a party. No, you need to do this here and there. And like, oh, here, just take this and then we'll go have a good time or something like that. Like, and that concerns me as well, because like, if that's what it was all about, taking these things for those reasons, I don't think I'd feel so averse, you know, to them. But that's not the way that they're put out there. Now, I'm not saying, and I don't think you're saying that they can't be done recreationally.
Yeah. I mean, people obviously can do whatever they want, but, it's just much more profound when you're trying to achieve something out of it. You're trying to get some concrete outcome, something to, maybe even you go into it thinking like with something that you're trying to specifically solve, that you're thinking like that's, maybe it's not subconscious. Maybe there's, like a lot of people do like MDMA if they realize that they're having a couple and they realize that they're having, like some issues and it's really difficult for them to be transparent with each other, and it's like maybe they're just not communicative people, right? And MDMA will just kind of like trigger that, and they'll just like spill their hearts out, and you know, it's just, it is a crutch. It's basically a crutch, and you shouldn't be using a crutch all the time. You should be trying to move beyond a crutch.
Well, then let me ask you that. I mean, can a relationship kind of like where that becomes the crutch of it and becomes the crux of the relationship? It becomes like what the relationship's based around. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a problem. Definitely you can use a crutch once in a while, obviously, if you're in a real rut. But if you're basing a relationship off of doing MDMA, every week or every month.
I mean, have you seen relationships where this sort of thing happens?
Yeah.
You have? Okay.
I mean, I think it tends to happen. It's kind of similar to like alcohol, like couples just drinking with each other because they have like mundane-ish lives.
Sure.
They work 9 to 5. And you know, it's hard for them to get that excitement. Maybe they've been together for a while. They know they still love each other, but it's like they don't get that same excitement. And I think maybe MDMA is just sort of a replacement for alcohol. You know, you drink on the weekends, and then like once a month you do MDMA to like do something even more exciting. But then that just becomes a part of the routine as well.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of work. Like there's a lot of people who get into relationships who get married based upon, because they have the same job.
They work together.
You know, they work together, and that is the basis of their relationship, is that they are both trying to, say, achieve a goal in their job. And yeah, I feel like I could see that happening, where relationships could, not just couples, like friendships and everything could be completely based around a drug.
Yep.
And regardless of whether I think the drug's a positive or a negative thing, like just something about that seems a little...
I've always felt really uncomfortable with that. Yeah, I've seen a few situations like that. Yeah, and Paige, I really like the way you're talking about this, because I've never quite... It's pretty rare that I've heard somebody talk about approaching drugs with like mindfulness and awareness and like having a specific goal that you want to use them to help with, rather than just seeing what happens and doing it for the hell of it.
Yeah.
And that, like, I had this friend in high school, and this actually has shaped my views on psychedelics quite a bit. I had a friend in high school who I was really close friends with. Actually, I kind of had a crush on her, to be honest, but I never said anything about it. But we were really good friends. We'd have sleepovers and stuff, and I thought she was really cool. And then one weekend, like, she went to some party or something, and she did some kind of mushrooms or acid with like a different group of people. And she, like, I remember sitting at the lunch table with her in the cafeteria, and she's telling me about it. She's like, oh my God, everything's different now. Like, everything's changed. You just don't get it, and you'll never understand unless you do this too. And then we were like not friends anymore.
Oh, yeah, that is really traumatizing.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I was like, what the fuck is this shit? You know, like, take my friend away from me.
Yeah, I can see why that would cause some bad perspectives of drugs.
But a lot of people do look at it that way, as though they're like in this cool club and like you don't get it if you've never done this stuff.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just the way my personality is, like, that kind of drives me further away.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. If someone said that to me when I was younger, I'd be like, what?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then I was like asking her questions, trying to like, okay, well, how is everything different? She's like, well, I can't even explain it to you because you just won't get it.
Oh, that's annoying.
Like, okay, what am I supposed to do with that?
Right.
No.
Yeah.
That's a sad
I mean, what do you think about any of that, Paige? I mean, do you have any thoughts on?
I think, that specific story, I think the fact that she thought it was like a total, like everything being totally different was just like being naive and being young, and like,
Yeah.
if maybe she first did it when she was like 25 or something, she wouldn't have said that. It would have been, it would have been like, whoa, I had this really crazy trip. You wouldn't necessarily, it's hard to describe, but you know, it would be a little more reasonable.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, you talked about how these are very popular in subcultures, you know, and I think subcultures get created around these things themselves, you know, around LSD or cannabis or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, like, well, actually with cannabis, like Stephanie and I had a friend who said that like he had never done, you know, he'd never smoked marijuana or anything before or anything like that. And he finally did. And like his claim was he didn't get it. Like he said, he's like, I didn't just suddenly become a Rastafarian or something or whatever, you know, like he didn't suddenly, his conclusion that he came to, and I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying, you know, the conclusion he came to was that, you know, like all this stuff, like the way that people start talking and everything when they're, you know, when they're smoking and, you know, or whatever they're doing, that he said it's all kind of like made up. Like he didn't feel like that.
It's just a culture that they sort of start to absorb.
Yeah. Like it's something that existed previously. I don't know. And I don't know what exactly to make of that, but like something like raves, like we mentioned raves earlier, like raves definitely have a culture around them.
Well, you know, there are these studies that they do with like college students where they'll give them like a fake quote alcoholic drink that tastes like alcohol, but it's not really, and put them around a bunch of people who are acting drunk, and the people who had the fake drink also start to act drunk.
Oh yeah.
Like, so the peer group has a huge influence, I think, on, and it's like a way of bonding to all share the same experience of being on a certain substance. So I totally believe that part of the experience is the people you're surrounded by, and also what you think they're experiencing, and how like your experience stacks up to theirs.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I want to talk about rave culture here. Okay. Maybe
culture.
Rave. What did I say?
No, you said rave. I'm just being, because it sounded like rape culture. So
well, Jesus, no, we can
like,
say that
usually
for another
when you
episode.
hear the phrase culture, you know, like anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean rape culture.
Good point.
Yeah. So, but real quick, I just want to take a moment to thank our other sponsor of Sovryn Tech. It's so wonderful to have sponsors, you know, people that appreciate the message that Sovryn Tech gets out there, the conversations that get had. And boy, this is a hell of a conversation, isn't it? Certainly one I never expected to have. But something I think one should expect to, or at least want to have, is honestly some gold and silver. Whew, that's not a conversation. That's something you hold right in your hand, baby. And you can when you get it through Roberts and Roberts Brokerage. This is, I say it every week, but it's the truth, one of the best companies in the world today. Run by a guy that gets it. I mean, he understands liberty, tech, geek, the whole thing. He is the real deal over there, Roberts and Roberts Brokerage. And, you know, we were talking about cryptocurrencies. Hey, if you want to get your hands on this stuff with Bitcoin, you can do that. And why not? I mean, it's a Bitcoin preferred business. Roberts and Roberts Brokerage is just, I mean, phenomenal. So, and they'll even, they'll buy some gold and silver from you. So if you want to go that route, go right ahead. It's a two-way street with these guys. They're the absolute best. So just head over to gold.zog.ninja, or rrbi.co and just let them know that the Golden Stallion sent you. And believe me, they're going to know who you're talking about. They listen to the show. So yeah, Roberts and Roberts Brokerage, just love them to death. Use that Bitcoin, get your hands on some gold and silver, diversify your wealth. That's the way to do it. And, all right, let's, we thank them, of course, for sponsoring Sovryn Tech, another longtime sponsor, and just an honor to have them on board. So we'll get back to the show now, and let's keep talking it up. So we ended off before the break there, we were going to talk about rave culture, RAVE. But I think overall, Paige, I mean, you kind of wanted to talk about, kind of weighing positives and negatives. But I mean, we were talking before the show a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong. Like it seemed like there was sort of a negative outlook on rave culture, or at least a different one. Maybe not all hunky dory.
Yeah. I think it's just more from my recent experiences doing MDMA at raves.
Well, how often have you gone to raves, like in your life?
Technically only these last two. I don't know, like, what is a rave? I think it's just like electronic music or some sort of like danceable music with drugs, right? Like,
yeah, all night.
Yeah.
It goes all night.
Yeah. Well, even then, like a lot of raves these days don't go all night because venues
really?
Can't stay open.
Oh, yeah,
late.
that's right.
So they end at like 2 or 3 and you call it a rave and yeah.
Well, if I can, like, just like maybe 5 minutes here, and folks, we might go a little bit long. So just affiliates, just so you know, we might go a little bit long. Like, so the first time I had ever heard of a rave, I'll tell this little bit of a story, was actually, this would have been 1999, 2000, something like that. Okay. It was really like the first time that I ever like even saw or had any idea what the hell a rave was. Now, the funny way that I found out about this was there was the DVD. And this is when DVDs were really just started being a thing, for the movie Pitch Black with Vin Diesel. Mm-hmm. Great film. I love that. And in that, there was a special feature in the DVD for these, what they called pitch black raves. They were raves that were supposed to give you the experience of like the Pitch Black film or something, right? And I was like, what the hell is this? It's like, I don't get it at all. I don't understand. And so I'm watching it, like I'm watching this little making of, or this little like demo reel for what these raves were like and everything. And now, looking back, I'm like, okay, that was just bullshit marketing. That had nothing to do with Pitch Black. It's not like there was a bunch of sci-fi fans dancing around or anything. They made no mention of drugs. I mean, like, there's absolutely no mention of drugs whatsoever in this, And so I just thought it looked kind of ridiculous, and I didn't understand. I was like, okay, so they're playing electronic music. There's like black lights all over the place. There's a bunch of, wild lights and all this shit. And so that's, that was what I thought raves were. Now, this just added on to a compound problem I had growing up, where I see a lot of people having a good time in various things, like in the 80s or in the 90s, like, you have heavy metal bands and everything, and you watch like their concert videos, which I watched endlessly, and everybody's going wild, and, women are pulling up their, their shirts and everything, showing off their tits, whatever. And I was like, wow, this is freaking great. And the only thing that I'm seeing, understand this, like, you're not even seeing the beer. The only thing you're seeing is, okay, there's music playing. There's guys on stage being very charismatic, rocking it out, and, or gals, even if it was like a Vixen show or something. And you're at a concert and you're in this, whole situation or something, kind of similar to, after a fashion, to the rave video that I saw. Like I said, I didn't know that drugs were like a necessary part of this. I just thought this is what a good time was. It's like, oh, so if you want to live like this, you just kind of like, integrate, these aspects of culture, like heavy metal music, or in the case of raves, like electronics music and, wild lights or something, but no, then I have to find out much later that no, actually people really don't act like this unless they're taking drugs, and yeah. As for me, like, no, I can just act like I can just have a good time. Like, I can just rock it out. I can, pump my fists and everything and have a good time or whatever, or dance.
And no judgment about that either.
No.
Because like there's a lot of reasons why people can't let go or let loose unless they have some kind of substance that helps them let loose.
Yeah.
Because there's so much shame in culture about even things like dancing, right? Like there's so much judgment of the way people dance. There's so much, like scrutinizing of people's dancing, and there's so much built up around it. I mean, sexual mores, like, for example, like I've known some people that just they couldn't have sex, or they couldn't have sex with, like, they couldn't have gay sex unless they had something like alcohol. Usually it was alcohol. So, and I get it. Like, I understand that. I think it's good to be able to overcome those barriers and be able to have a good time no matter what your state is without the aid of any kind of substances. But I get why it's really hard for some people to do that.
Yeah, no, and I can empathize with that too. But admittedly, for like a few years, when I finally figured this out, like, or even like The Matrix, like the second Matrix movie, The Matrix Reloaded, like there's that great scene in Zion where like everybody's just suddenly dancing and everything. Right. I'm like, oh, this is great. Like people are like half nude and shit. I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I want out of life. But then eventually someone finally tells you, Brian, nobody does that just like on their own. You know, like they have to start consuming something or whatever. And I'll admit it, you know, it got me mad because I was like, well, what the fuck? You know, like, I didn't know that. I thought this is just how people act. But instead, like, I have to, you know, like, take this stuff that, you know, in my mind, I lose control, you know, when that happens, which I guess is, you know, it's kind of the byproduct of why these kind of parties happen in the first place, I suppose. Yeah. But for a little while, I was very negative about it. I mean, I'm not anymore. Now, like you said, Stephanie, absolutely no judgment. And I totally understand and empathize why people, you know, feel the need or why they do it. But yeah, so admittedly, like, rave culture was kind of a negative thing for me because, you know, when I suddenly realized that, oh no, this isn't just like dancing and having, because I can fucking dance. I mean, you know, no boast, not just saying like that, you know, that's not a problem, but like that it needed something else and I just didn't do. And I think my reaction, I felt like, I felt like it was just some kind of big secret that nobody wanted to let me in because I wasn't one of the cool kids, you know, and it kind of reminds me of like high school traumas almost in a way. Yeah. And so that was kind of a negative thing for me. But now that I understand what they are, I get it, what they are, you know, I understand, you know, what all the elements that come together, you know, to make a rave, like kind of like you were describing, Paige. So you haven't gone to many of these though.
No, I mean, it's not really my scene.
Sure. Right.
I'm a fan of electronic music, but honestly, like, that shit gets repetitive. I cannot keep dancing and I think that's like one of a big component of taking MDMA at raves is that you can just keep going. Like it keeps going, even if the house music, it gets just so repetitive. Like, so my kind of first experience was actually way better than my second experience at a rave. So it was this past, both of the times were with my friend who goes to raves a lot, and she really wanted me to go. And, you know, I was like, all right, whatever. It's not going to be a bad time. It'll still be an experience. And it was New Year's Eve was the first one. And that was actually really, really fun because the music was, a little less repetitive and more like hard, like a lot more drum and bass, and like you can like stomp around and get mad and like get really like I don't know. It was just like really a lot more dynamic than typical house music.
Sure.
So that was a really good part of it, and it was also just kind of like my first sort of rave. So it's just a new experience, but both times I realized, like, I don't really know how to say it nicely, but it's just like it's just like the way people act on MDMA. It's just so obviously fake to me that it was like, I could not shake that off, like, out of my head, especially when they do this silly little ritual of like giving each other their candy. So candy is essentially these bracelets that
it's
are
like Mardi Gras.
Plastic bracelets. People generally make their own and try to make them unique or like have a huge collection. So their arms are just covered in bracelets. And then you do this thing where you like lock eyes with someone, or like someone walks up to you and you like clasp hands with them, and you or them will like move one of their bracelets over the hand clasp onto the other wrist. So it's like supposed to be this really like profound thing, but it's just like you're giving someone a bracelet that's made of plastic, and like they make it out to be this really big
reality
thing.
Settles in.
And then like someone did that to me.
What about what we had, what we share? Bracelet man, doesn't that mean anything to you?
And like someone did that to me like on New Year's, and like I just kept thinking to myself, like, this is so stupid. What does this even mean? I was just like, thanks, I guess.
So, all right. That sounds absolutely absurd to me as well.
Yeah.
But, all right. But I want to break that down a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, so when, a common phrase that gets used to justify a whole lot of things in our present world is, I was drunk.
Yeah.
And it really, like, that gets used as an excuse to usually do something that you really, and you've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
Whatever that may be. It could be good or bad.
But you need that permission slip to actually do it, because there's reasons you think you shouldn't.
Yeah. So, okay. Now at churches, just regular churches, not like acid house churches or something. Okay. At churches, a lot of times people, like when they're doing the prayers or something, like a lot of people just break down like into tears or something. Now, obviously there's no God. Okay. And but it is a place, a space where you feel safe. Woo, safe spaces for the right.
That's right.
It's a place where you can feel safe in like really letting out these emotions that you've probably been repressing for a while.
The most
or
extreme
these
example of
expressions.
that is the speaking in tongues and the falling over when the pastor like blows on you or something.
Right, yeah, because